This project's entire purpose is to
make fire.
So I wanted to see what would happen if I gave that fire the main stage. And with fine woodworking, that will always be a risky concept. After all, fire is pretty unpredictable. But what if there's a way to use wind to control it? Well, challenge accepted. So I set out to build a wooden table that uses both wind and fire to unexpectedly create the most dangerous piece of furniture I've ever made.
Are you okay?
So my first thought in this project was that since it's fire themed, I should use figured cherry and maple, which understandably might leave you confused if you don't know a whole lot about woods. Well, each type of wood, especially if it has neat characteristics, can go by several different names. For instance, I could call this quilted or curly cherry, but there's one more name that's much more fitting for this video, and that is flame cherry. And that flame, curl, or quilt comes from an undulating pattern that's grown into the structure of the wood, which creates a stunning three-dimensional chatoyance.
So all the pairs in this stack can just be glued up together, 2 pieces. But I have to pick 3 of these that get glued together alongside a few little strips to make them wide enough.
I know adding 2 thin strips to the outsides is kind of weird, but there is a method to my madness. I'm working off of a center line on every single one of these panels, which means I need everything to be symmetrical and I need that center joint to run down the actual physical center of each panel. My plan for this table is to have a wooden base with a concrete top and in the middle, a fire vortex.
So at this point, I have full-length panels, and they need to be cut into multiple sections with different types of angles, while also keeping that grain continuity.
So to follow up on that fire vortex I left you hanging on, I've been kind of having that itch to create more and more unique things. And also those unique ideas create more of a challenge for me and certainly a more interesting video for you. And at first glance, adding a fire to the middle of a table just seemed normal to me, even though it's not. But just then a little voice inside my head said,
"Corey, just make the fire a tornado."
And boy, did I listen.
So now I need to cut this shape into every single bottom piece where there's less width at the top versus more width at the bottom. So I made a jig to make sure every single one is perfect. So on my very last one, I realized that I screwed up because this last one doesn't have the top and bottom cut. And I can't reset the saw, otherwise I'll lose this current setting. So I think I'm gonna have to use the track saw.
A track saw is kind of always the solution, isn't it? I mean, if you forgot a cut, use a track saw. You need something to be straight, use a track saw. And most importantly, if you're having problems in your relationship, just buy a track saw. No, she won't be mad at you. She'll completely understand.
This time it hurts because it was just pure stupidity. I accidentally cut the first top piece upside down. So I'm gonna have to glue this thing back together and make the correct cut.
I kind of gave one of my benches a makeover, I guess, and now I can use these bench clamps. Oh, they are so nice.
So what I'm doing is I'm actually going to push these together, purposely making sure there's some space where there's not going to be any glue. So when I pull these back apart, perfect. We have spots now that we can put some super glue. Cutting it the correct way this time. Yeah, you can't even tell. There's a glue joint there. Third mistake. I can't believe it. I forgot to reset the angle for these sides from when I was cutting the bottom ones, which were one angle sharper than these. So now these are cut at too sharp of an angle, so there's going to be a little bit of gapping on the inside.
But this will be fixed in a later step, even though it kind of doesn't even need to be fixed.
Oh my God, it flips so badly, like it's pinching my fingers. Okay.
It's kind of funny, this exact process on a small scale is really easy, but once you scale it up like this, it becomes a lot harder. But it wouldn't have been as hard if I actually remembered to get packing tape like I was supposed to.
We're good. And let's not even touch this for the next 24 hours. Well, dang, that was a lot harder than I expected it to be, probably because it's so massive. So for this top part though, the most important thing is to keep the letter sequencing exactly the same.
For the tiny inside gap issue, I actually cut filler strips that have that 1 degree that will fill up that space. They'll be just as strong as anything else, and it saved me a tremendous amount of time from having to recut the angles on every single panel, which would have resulted in a smaller octagon, making me have to cut the bottom pieces too. It just would have been a mess.
So now that I have like these 2 wing things on, I can see if the remaining spots fit correctly.
And since there's a tiny gap at the top, I can just cut it off with a track saw and make them fit perfectly. Technically, this does resize the octagon a little bit, but since it's such a little amount, it didn't really make much of a difference. As long as all the joints are tight and closed, that's all I care about.
That was a pain in the butt that I was not expecting, but now we can move on. So on top of the table base is going to be a really unique cement top, and I need to start making those forms so that we can get the cement poured.
To help you understand what's happening, I kind of need to tell you how I came up with this idea in the first place. When I designed the carved lamp that was featured in my last video, I realized how well the earth and water elements were incorporated into the entire project. And if you haven't seen that one, check it out. The comments are absolutely insane. But since those elements really drove the entire project, I decided to make an elements series, which inherently meant that the next thing that I build needs to incorporate wind and fire. But I'm a woodworker, so how in the heck am I going to incorporate fire into my project when those two don't really get along? Well, fast forward till today and enter the concrete tabletop.
All right, so I silicone caulked everything, and now we just need an inside form. Perfect. It's actually made in several pieces so that I can unscrew them and actually get them out after the concrete's in. But for the form that creates the bowl, it would have been impossible to create, so I 3D printed it into 8 separate sections that just click together.
And this form just isn't something that I could make any other way, at least not easily. Especially with the inward-facing angle of the sides and compound curves, printing them is not only practical, but it's an affordable solution to a lot of the design challenges I'm facing in this project. But bringing an idea like this to life requires real precision, and that's where Bamboo Lab comes in. There's multiple complex elements in this build that require prototyping and testing. For instance, the tubes that direct the air have spiral vanes that will swirl the air before it reaches the fire. And these vanes had to be tested, as well as the joints that will connect the tubes themselves, and the fit that they have with any mating components. And this would no doubt be a painfully slow or impossible process if I used any other method of prototyping and manufacturing the actual parts. For most of this build, I'm using Bamboo's PPA-CF filament, which we'll get to why that's important later, and I'm printing it using my favorite all-around machine, the H2D. This is an all-in-one DIY powerhouse with options for a laser or cutter head attachment. And this is what makes it your own personal manufacturing hub. The dual nozzles also make it really quick for color or filament changes, but what I'm utilizing most is the H2D's upgraded nozzles that can reach temperatures of 350 degrees Celsius. And alongside the active chamber heating to reduce warping, or the adaptive air assist that filters out VOCs, this is what makes it possible for me to print engineering grade materials like PPACF. But at the time of this filming, Bamboo Lab is having a 3rd year anniversary sale, and you can get up to 40% off on machines and other accessories. If you decide to check it out, please use my link below to let them know who inspired you. So when I made up my mind that a concrete top would solve this fire and wood problem, I remembered a few videos that I've seen of Mike from Industrial Maker using this really cool cement product from Fishstone Concrete. So I reached out to them and they supplied their UltraCast 360 with some glass fibers that I can add to it. So now I can cast it at around 1 inch thick and it'll still be incredibly strong. But hold on, before you go disappearing and trying this on your own, this product has been specifically designed for countertops and tabletops, not fire pits.
Okay, it's been 48 hours and this puppy's nice and hard. Let's crack her open, and then I need to pour more cement in the bottom.
Let's see if this 3D printed form idea is a good one or if it presents more problems than it solves. When I pull this form off, it exposes where a pipe was printed into the form. And this goes for all 8 sides. And each one of these geniusly leaves a spot for a metal pipe to be installed.
So if you notice, there's actually a lip on this inside edge. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna hold on to the new concrete that gets poured on the inside.
I don't know if this is already a thing in the concrete world, but I kind of need to pat myself on the back for this one. The printed forms worked so perfectly and were so accurate, it was almost unbelievable. And pouring this fireball in 2 separate pours solved its own heap of problems.
Tough. Nice and dewy.
I'll be honest, even though it doesn't matter that the bottom of this fireball is smooth, it was still getting to my OCD. So I'm doing a skim coat to feed my perfectionism one last time.
Oh my gosh, it's freaking amazing. What the heck? It's so smooth and so professional looking. I am super happy. There we go. Oh, she's a beast.
Now I can start working with the curly or flame maple in this case. And you might be wondering why it's thicker stock, and usually that means I'm gonna be resawing it.
Just noticed those staples.
Since I already have the main supportive wood base, I could just stop there and start moving on to the internals. But if you know anything about Fortress, we usually don't just leave things simple. So I'm turning this lumber into accents that'll just add a little bit of shape as well as shadows because I plan on adding lights to illuminate them. Resawing is something that I'm doing more and more on a regular basis, and this is just simply another process of cutting one board into multiple boards. So what makes this different, cutting the board on edge? Well, first, it can be pretty dang hard if you don't have the right blade. I suggest a carbide blade. But most importantly, this will allow me to create a very symmetrical look, almost like I have 2 of the same exact board. This is called book matching.
There's just something so amazing about a good book match. It gets me excited every time.
Each one of these book matches will be cut into a diamond, which something about this shape keeps showing up in my projects lately. So I thought hard. Maybe my only toy as a child was one of those block toys where you put it in the matching slot, but all of the blocks were lost except for the diamond, maybe? And so apparently that's the only shape I learned. There can be some tricks from YouTube that are just kind of silly, but then there can be a few that are just outright amazing. And if you haven't tried welding your joints with super glue, give it a try. It takes some practice, but it sets up and holds the joint closed, but you can still use wood glue in the actual joint. And the best part is these super glue welds won't even be seen because they'll be on the inside face.
Sweet. So these diamonds actually sit flat against these facets, but right now they're one piece, so they don't. Instead, they need to be cut in half and rejoined so that everything actually sits properly. But first, I need to sand and refine this before I go fitting anything against it. All right, let's see if I can get this off myself. Oh. It's still taped on the inside. Oh yeah. Ooh.
Sometimes I come upon accidental methods of how I do things, and this method is one of those. In a project long ago, I forgot to cut the correct angles on the back side of something very similar to this. And I was faced with the conundrum of how in the heck do I get this thing to sit flat? Well, this jointer was that solution. And since it got those faces so flat, I still do this method to this day. It's much easier than trying to cut those extreme sharp angles and cutting yourself on the table saw, because you can see what the angles looked like before versus after being flattened. And trust me, those sharp edges will get you.
Hey, Dang it, that's what I was afraid of, and it kind of has a little broken section right there. I think I can cut that off and glue it back on this side, but I need to figure out a way to do the rest so that this does not happen.
Usually a good solid attempt to at least try to glue the piece back on is worth it. In most cases, it'll look fine. In some cases, it'll look great. And in other cases, it just flat out won't work. And in this specific case, I guess we'll just have to see.
There.
Bridget thought of the best idea though. She was like, why don't you just stop your cut and then finish it with a Japanese saw? And so I was like, yeah, I know, I thought of that, whatever. And so like, don't tell her because it'll take away my manhood. So to prevent that from happening again, I attached a piece of tape to the tiny little piece so that I could just pull it away after it was done cutting. And now the diamonds are at their final shape and they actually fit together on the base.
I just accidentally put them in this orientation, and this gives me a ton of ideas for future projects. Geometrical shapes are just so cool. All right, now we know they fit perfectly, but we can't stick them yet because we have to start the internals for the fire vortex. So I 3D printed this mock-up of the whole vortex system that's gonna be inside the table so that I could actually test if it's gonna work first. It's working. Oh, yes, yes. All right. Oh my God. This is a 10-inch inline fan, and it's going to be the driving force as well as the wind element in this series. And it will mount on the inside of this table base, which means it needs a platform. So for that, I have these 2 high-grade pieces of pre-finished plywood, and I'm not just mounting the turbine straight to it. Instead, I printed this really cool inlet so that the motor can attach to it, and this will provide a lot more area for the air to flow in from underneath. It also directs the air seamlessly into the turbine so that there's less friction.
Back when YouTube was full of videos of people putting fans next to campfires and making them twirl, one important thing that my young self learned is that apparently you need a lot of air. So knowing that knowledge, I got a fan that was plenty oversized.
Oh, baby.
It's important that the turbine pushes enough air because it's going to be connected to 8 separate tubes feeding the air to the fire, which you technically just saw in action, but it was scaled down by quite a bit. The question is, when it's scaled up, is everything going to fit? Are all the prints going to be the correct size? Are all of the dimensions of my base going to be correct? But most critically, is the fire going to vortex?
Uh-oh, did I just make a massive amplifier? Well, hopefully not, because I need this thing as close to whisper quiet in the end as I can possibly get it.
Why is being quiet important? Well, if you're going to use this as a table, you probably don't want a jet engine in front of your face. And trust me, this thing looks like some crazy octopus jet engine. So the more I can mitigate the sound, the better, because this could get loud quickly.
Why am I just now realizing how absolutely insane this idea is? Man, so the odd problem that I'm facing is this filament is so incredibly stiff that even this steel band clamp can't close it tight enough. So I think the only solution is to make a few cuts in this so that it can actually close up. There we go. So what will carry the air up to the firebolt to create the vortex is these tubes. And they're specially designed because I put veining on the inside so that it spirals the air in each tube, therefore controlling it more when it actually hits the vortex. But first, we need to weld these together.
So it's time to answer the question of, aren't these just gonna melt on the inside of the table? Well, not exactly. This is carbon fiber reinforced PPA filament, which is like nylon's buff big brother, and it prints at 550 degrees Fahrenheit or 290 Celsius, versus almost half of that temperature for PLA. That's why I have to keep torching this soldering iron to keep it hot enough to actually weld these pieces together. But is this temperature resistance going to be high enough?
So the really cool part about doing it that way is that it's very strong. But if I put these in first, then I won't be able to get this top on, so I should probably do that first.
No matter what I chose to hold the fire on top of this table, it was gonna get hot. And of course I knew if I connected these plastic tubes right to that heat source, they would almost certainly melt. Especially with air being pumped into the fire, it's basically gonna turn into a furnace.
Dang, that's actually pretty freaking cool.
So the first thing I designed into this is this air diffuser. It will pump air into the inside of the base, keeping things cool.
Dang it, too small? All right, let's turn it on for the first time. Nice. That's not loud at all. That's setting 5. Let's try setting 10. That's a lot of air.
So I think I have a good solution to connect these tubes to the fire bowl, but in order to do that, I need the fire bowl installed. And then in order to do that, I need something to hold the heavy fire bowl. This is one of those simple tasks that requires 10 tasks before it just to get it done. And there's actually an industry term for this called a dependency chain, where one task is dependent on the other, which is dependent on the other. But I think I prefer the slang term more. It's called yak shaving. So I did some quick research on this term just because I was wondering where the heck it came from. I just figured that shaving a yak was one of those dependency chain projects. I mean, I live in Colorado, y'all. I have no clue. But I guess it comes from the 1990s and describes how you can start an easy task like fixing your sink, and the task chain gets so wild that you end up having to shave a yak. Those are pretty.
Well, I think it's very safe to say that my welding is not as good as my woodworking. Let's get these cleaned up.
I'm worried that the steel X-brace I just made might get hot if it's contacting the fire bowl, so I'm using this ceramic insulation in between it and any wood. And this stuff is completely flame-proof and extremely heat-resistant. And you can trust me, after all, I am a professional.
Perfect. Yes.
But I'm thinking this isn't going to be enough, so I think I need to put this insulation on top of the steel as well. That way it's insulated from the fire bowl itself. It kind of makes sense that if I can keep the metal from getting hot, then I kind of don't have to worry about the metal being hot, really. So these are called redundancies, and if you happen to find yourself making a fire vortex table on a Sunday evening, which you definitely should not, then you should probably add some redundancies.
Okay, it's time to get this concrete. No. There, we're in. Wow. We got it.
We are finally at the primary task of which we did all of those yak shaving tasks to get to, and to not so officially answer the question of how am I attaching these plastic tubes to the fire bowl. Part of the solution is these metal collars, which is actually exhaust pipe. Although this super glue is definitely not heat resistant, it's just there to tack them in place. But this is actually where that 3D printed form is really shining. Every single one of these pipes is installing perfectly at the same exact angle, and they fit so well in their holes. And speaking of pipes and holes, I should probably grout the inside so that the fire can't escape out of any cracks.
Oh, perfect. Whoops, I just broke this one off. Okay, well, she goes in. It's a little tight, but that's what these tests are for. I wanted to make sure everything was gonna work before I had it all finished and then realize, crap, I can't get it together. But I'm just gonna have to fix that one pipe that broke free, and there's a few blocks that need to be cut just for some clearance. Otherwise, let's get the top on, and I wanna hear what it sounds like. Now, be careful to not pinch your fingers. Oh, don't let it do that. Gotcha. All right, so it's on level 5 and it's still really quiet. I think once we have a fire in there and a column of heat, oh, it's gonna be sick.
So I know what you might be thinking about this pipe design. If the plastic tubes touch the metal tubes and those get hot, aren't they just gonna melt the plastic tubes? And yes, they probably would, and that's why I only partially answered the question so far. I will have a solution to this during final assembly. I know I'm using 3D printing for some pretty outrageous tasks in this project, but I think most creators and woodworkers would truly appreciate being able to print precise jigs on demand.
Whoopsies.
Well, there goes that jig, so I'm going to print a new one and get back to it.
My face is so covered right now.
Oh, and these rounded sections are going to be for lighting later on.
These feet will go on later after finishing.
And boy, is finishing a challenging one when you're talking about exterior furniture. If you don't know a whole lot, right now I'm actually spraying it with water to raise the grain. And you can see in this macro shot that the grain gets a fuzzy texture. Well, if I sand that off now, it's much less likely to get that fuzzy texture in the rest of the processes. And most woodworkers, even with a lot of experience, think that this is the only reason. But it actually protects the wood from any moisture it might face in the future. So I personally feel that wood finishing is a lost art, mainly because of hard wax oils on the market. Sure, they make everything easy, but easy doesn't give you flame maple like this. But guess what? I do provide a ton of information on my Patreon about building and finishing basically every project I make. The Patreon content for these projects is filmed separately, and I narrate it to provide information value so that you can learn. So if this interests you, I have QR codes for Patreon and memberships, or you can use the link in the description. And by the way, thank you so much to the members that have already joined. Towards the beginning of this project, I had some delusional 100% confidence that I was going to be able to pull this off no problemo. But now as I staple this ceramic insulation on to keep the wooden base from catching on fire, it kind of makes me wonder.
It's so weird to be working with materials like this. So funny.
These lights are actually 3D printed mounts with mini spotlights attached. They just run on 12 volts and they're really easy to pigtail together. I actually go way overboard by soldering them together and putting heat shrink on them. You can just use these little connectors. But in the rare case that one of those comes loose, I don't want to have to take this whole thing apart to get the lights working again. If you live in an area where there's a lot of ground animals and squirrels, you probably wondered if there's going to be animals crawling in the bottom of this turbine. And the answer is no, because now they cannot get in. The control module for the turbine is kind of annoying to use, so I'm going to mount it on the inside because I can use an app on my phone, and as long as I protect it from the heat, then I imagine it'll probably be just fine.
Slick.
So, for an official 100% completed answer, what's keeping the plastic and the metal separated is that ceramic insulation. So we are done.
Oh, I just realized I was about to put the top on and be happy that it was done. And then I realized I forgot to put the frickin' diamonds on the outside, and they have to be screwed on from the inside.
I just wanted to take one last honest minute to thank you so much for watching my videos. I think it's amazing that you take time out of your day to watch my content. As far as I'm concerned, this is a mutual relationship, and I can leave you with one promise. You have my word that I will continue thinking of fun ideas so that we both can enjoy this process. And this video's ending is definitely more than I bargained for.
And in case you're wondering, it's 322 pounds. Well, she's done, and I've been waiting for this moment for weeks. I just want to light her up. Starting to get hot. All right, I'm gonna start with the lowest level first, and let's see if it does anything. All right, we're level 1. It's spooling up right now. Oh my gosh. Going to level 2. We're starting to swirl. And starting to explode everywhere too. Let's see if more air is better. Oh, all right, I'm turning it off. The concrete is cracking. We found the culprit. The concrete is blowing apart. Since I already exploded the concrete, maybe there'll be less exploding if I make the fire again. Anyways, we have several fire extinguishers, and I just want to get a good freaking vortex out of this thing. I mean, it's freaking hot, but I would say it's a vortex. And it's not exploding so much in my face now.
This is the very moment things took a turn. I sat down to take a good thumbnail of me eating spaghetti in front of my fire vortex table. What could go wrong? The human reaction time is 200 milliseconds, and this is about 167. Let's see how the rest plays out.
Are you okay?
Oh, did you get a picture of that?
I hope so, but I was also running away.
This is when I realized the bottom of the fire bowl exploded, probably because of moisture. And I no longer had my mic on because it flew off when I was running away.
I'm sorry. I will forever remember running away with hot coals falling on my head. Let's see how the table survived. Well, the first thing I notice is this beautiful hole in the table. Then secondly, this beautiful gap. The iron bent from the force, and this flipped upside down. That's crazy. Well, I can't believe it, but the parts that I was most worried about are perfectly intact, not even so much as deformed from getting too hot So upon inspecting my entire body, I think the only injury I got is like a tiny little spot on my neck. Thankfully. But that is the end of the video, and I'll see you on the next one. So I found my mic. It is literally like 100 feet away. It's insane.